It's a very warm welcome to you, Karin.
Thank you, Hannah. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's just talk about the issue of sustainability. And I think with the talk that's happening right now with China and the hard landing, what happens if China does have to pull back on its economic growth? What happens to a continent like Africa, where so many countries are getting investment coming in from China? So talk to us a little bit about that and how you can improve the sustainability of how much China is putting onto the continent.
Sure. I mean, a key part of sustainability for us is standards. And one exciting thing that's happening, I think, within China this week with regard to environmental and social standards is the China Banking Regulatory Commission is adopting what they call the green credit policies. And this is an exciting development because they're adopting standards which are, we've worked with them to put in place. And they're having a conference on Wednesday, which I'll open with the Chinese Banking Regulatory Commission's chairman, and several central bankers from around the world will be there, including from Africa. So I think what this will help is to really help banking regulators across the continent to adopt standards so they can assess the risks of investments in their home markets against a standard for environment and social sustainability that will make sense for their people.
Now, one of the things that has come out is that, you know, when you talk about this knowledge sharing, that it's also two ways. It's not just, for instance, countries like China and India, you know, imparting their knowledge to African countries, but there is something that, and some valuable things that Africa has learned and can pass on to some of these powerhouses as well.
That is exactly right. And I think one area that IFC has seen success in Africa is around gender-based financing, where we work with financial institutions to help target female-owned businesses and provide not just micro businesses, but small and medium and larger businesses. So we've brought an expert from Africa to our team in Indonesia who's helping us across Asia to put these gender-based finance lines in place in Asia. So that's very exciting.
We talk a lot about China, and I was saying to you earlier on, I've just come from a conference where a lot was said about how much China is putting onto the African continent, but India also investing substantial amounts onto the continent.
Yes, India is following its own strengths in terms of services, in terms of IT, renewable energy. In addition, India has developed a lot of business models, what they call inclusive business models, which target the bottom of the pyramid, which have made a lot of sense in India and make sense for Africa. So we're trying to help bring those business models to the continent.
What I found quite interesting was coming from your office was that SouthSouth projects perform as well or better than the rest of IFC. Why is that?
I think that's a really interesting fact as well. And what I think is happening and what the studies have shown is that, you know, if you develop your business in a developing country, you're usually faced with different regulatory and market challenges. So when you then expand your business to another developing market, when you meet those same challenges, you know how to adapt your business to the local environment much more quickly than if you come from a developed market where those challenges have already been solved for you.
That's actually quite interesting, because that was going to be my question. A country like China has gone into countries that other countries will not even consider in terms of risk, and yet China goes in there and is quite successful.
Exactly, because I think when you look, especially at the Chinese private sector, you know, in the year 2000, only 1% of financing from banks in China went to the private sector. So they really had to adapt to very tough market conditions. So when they come over to the continent and face challenges, I think they're better able to really move forward in challenging environments than other companies may be.
Now, what we have seen about a country like China is when you're talking about the growth in that country, it's also filtering down to the people of China, that you do see businesses wanting to go into China to do business there because domestic spend is also growing. We're not seeing that so much on the African continent, just in terms of numbers. Where is the disconnect there in terms of how Africa is lagging behind in that growth filtering down to the people?
Well, I think it took a while for China, and they're still in the process of shifting their economy to a more consumption-driven economy. At the same time, I think they've now reached a point where 50% of their population live in cities, and that's driving consumption. But that's taken time, and we've just reached that point. I think when we look at Africa going forward, the power of the middle class is going to be quite strong. And so I think Chinese companies, Indian companies, Indonesian companies realize that, and that's why they're starting to come to Africa. At the same time, for the same reason they came to China many years ago. At the same time, I think that what they're also seeing in China is that their cost of manufacturing is going up, and that they can be as efficient in Africa at a lower cost.
I see very important in your role, just in being able to manage this, you know, and some of the businesses. A very interesting example that was given from your office was the Ghana Vodafone example, where when they wanted to start getting the finance to get this, they struggled. You came on board and you were oversubscribed at the end of the day.
Yes, I think what happened is, you know, when we look at the global financial crisis, a lot of the standard syndication players are pulling back from the markets, and what we're trying to do is then tap the liquidity in Asia, whether it's from Chinese institutions, Korean, Malaysian, Singaporean, and try to bring the power of that finance matched with our standards to the African continent.
Thank you so much for joining us, Karin. It's absolutely fantastic having you on the program.